If you want an edge in your fantasy drafts this year, listen up. Because there are 5 breakout players that I'm targeting this year that can absolutely change your entire season in fantasy. I'm not talking about some random sleepers. I'm talking about guys who already have legit paths to upside on their teams. And if you don't know me, I'm Sal Vetri. I've helped thousands of fantasy players win their leagues and schmack around their friends, and I plan to do the same with this video right now for you. And let's start off with the quarterback position. Usually we don't dive into quarterbacks, but this one is very exciting. I want to talk about Drake May because this guy, not only last year as a rookie, and we're definitely going to get into that, but all the way back to college, a couple years back, has been a baller ever since then. Okay, don't take my word for it. Let's just look at it. His final 2 years of college at UNC, this is according to Player Profiler stats. You can see right here, he goes for 4,300 yards. He's averaging 8.4 yards per attempt, completing 66% of his passes, 38 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions. And here's the big one. This is why he's a player that I think can break out this year. He has the mobility. Nearly 700 rushing yards in his junior year of college or second year of college. And here's the thing about that. That also factors in college sacks. So he had more than 700 rushing yards. The guy was absolutely elite when it came to mobility. And then despite losing some key pieces in his offense, he comes back in 2023 and he still has a nice year, 3,600 yards. He's averaging still 8.5 yards per attempt, completing over 63% of his passes. The touchdowns went down. The overall rushing went down a little bit as well, as the offense just in general wasn't as good. They didn't play as many games because they didn't go as deep. So overall though, final 2 years of college, Drake May was great. He ends up going as a top 10 overall pick in the draft to the New England Patriots. And when we got to see him last year in his rookie season, it was pretty good. And the guy was able to produce as a rookie despite basically the entire situation around him just being crap. I mean, you could start with the offensive line. According to PFF, which I trust their offensive line rankings, but really any system, wherever you're looking for your offensive line, the huddle, wherever you're looking, they were a bottom 5 unit in pass protection. PFF has them as the second worst unit, only next to the New Orleans Saints. So that was pretty bad. Okay, let's look at the pass catchers. If we look at this is the depth chart for the Patriots last year, right? Last year during the season, I believe this was in early October, so right when the season is starting to get humming, this is who they had at wide receiver overall. Demario Douglas, who is probably their best wide receiver, and look, he's a solid wide receiver, but he's a slot receiver, pretty limited overall, not a big play guy. That was the guy they were relying on to kind of move the chains for their offense. Other than that, KJ Osborne, who had just joined the team from the Vikings, sort of a journeyman. Jalen Polka, rookie. Javon Baker, rookie. They didn't do anything in their rookie year. Tyquan Thornton, since they drafted him and probably reached on him in the draft, hasn't done much. Kayshon Boutte, towards the end of the year, was earning like 5 and 6 targets. Maybe he'd make a splash play here or there, but I just named a bunch of guys. None of those guys are wide receiver ones on basically any other offense in the NFL. Probably none of them, outside of maybe Demario Douglas on some bad offenses, would be a wide receiver too. Like, that's how bad the pass catchers were here. In fact, Hunter Henry, the tight end, actually led the team in targets and receptions in any stat that really matters. And last time I checked, Hunter Henry isn't like a Trey McBride, George Kittle, Brock Bowers level tight end. That's not a good thing if Hunter Henry is leading your team in receiving. And last year, they also had Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson as their backs, both veterans who can catch some passes. Neither of them, though, are reliable when it comes to ball security issues, when it comes to pass protection, when it comes to creating explosive plays consistently. So what do you end up getting? You end up getting the New England Patriots going out this offseason and saying, hey, Drake May, as a kid, he still is a kid, but a rookie last year, looked really good with everything bad around him. Let's improve those things. Because we saw the glimpses of it from week 6 on last year when he actually started to get consistent starts. In those 12 games, his final 12 starts, the dude was averaging over 17 fantasy points per game, over 34 rushing yards per game. 17 fantasy points per game, a lot of that because of what he was doing on the ground, is awesome. I mean, he was a borderline top 10 quarterback last year, despite being in a terrible situation. And if you're curious, that 17 game pace would have had Drake May throwing for 3,800 yards, 26 touchdowns, and almost 600 rushing yards. Now, that's a serious dual threat quarterback, and you can see it right here. Historically efficient as a rookie last year. He was first in yards per attempt and first in success rate as a rusher overall. He was ahead of Josh Allen. He was ahead of Robert Griffin. This is talking about quarterbacks entering their rookie year. Very quietly, Drake May, yes, was one of the most, if not, based on these two stats right here, the most efficient rookie quarterback in terms of rushing. Okay, so that's awesome. Let's look at some other things from a scramble perspective last year. Drake May was only behind Jaden Daniels in scramble yards per game, 31 per game, ahead of Jalen Hurts, ahead of Lamar Jackson, right? And if you look at these exact same quarterbacks, those same quarterbacks by designed rushing yards per game, Jaden Daniels, this is rushing per game, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, and Drake May, just 0.1. All of this goes to show you Drake Drake May was putting on a ton of yardage last year on scrambles, which are not just design plays, they're improvised, compared to having design plays as a runner, and maybe there's a little bit more upside if we can get some more design plays as well. Now, I mentioned the Patriots did a lot this offseason to basically change this offense, and it's because they had to. The situation was terrible. So they go out there and they try and improve that offensive line that was bottom 5 by spending their first pick, a top 5 overall pick, on probably the best tackle on paper in this class in Will Campbell. Okay, so that's great. They go out in the draft and they get Morgan Moses a tackle, so now they have their offensive line from a tackle perspective. It looks like it's going to be, we hope, week 1 now solved with some reliable players, as much as a rookie could be reliable, a top 5 overall pick who looked great in college. Okay, but it doesn't stop there. In terms of the weapons, they were awful last year. You're relying on Demario Douglas as your number 1 pass catcher. Now you bring in Stefon Diggs, a player who is coming off of an injury, is a little bit older, but he has been a proven number 1 receiver for years in the NFL. You bring in Mac Hollins, who I actually think Mac Hollins in this offense could be a starter. Like, we saw him start for a decent amount of games last year with the Bills and Josh Allen, and Mac Hollins actually looked good out there. Good for what his role was, I should say. Then they draft Kyle Williams, a 3rd-round rookie. If he's able to hit the ground running, he's a player on the outside who can create a lot of explosive plays, which is what they were hoping Javon Baker could have done last year as a rookie, but just wasn't able to, or Tyquan Thornton just wasn't able to. They draft the 2nd-rounder in Travion Henderson, who can contribute not only in terms of explosive plays out of the backfield on the ground, but also as a pass catcher, adding yet another dimension for Drake May to actually pick up some easy yardage. So now we're looking at a wide receiver room that I think has been nicely turned over here. You get some veterans in Stefon Diggs and Mac Hollins. Okay, that's solid. You get Kyle Williams, you'll see what you get from him. If the 3rd-rounder can hit the ground running, that's awesome. And now Demario Douglas, instead of being your number 1 wide receiver, at the very best can be the number 2 and maybe even the number 3 if Kyle Williams can end up hitting for you. So this starts to look really good now. And of course, the coaching situation, we can say there's more adults in the room this year. When you're talking about Mike Vrabel coming in as the head coach here, you feel a better defensive presence, one. Running the ball, just a fundamental should be there, which should help the quarterback, a 2nd-year quarterback in Drake May, build off of last year. Josh McDaniels, who really knows how to get the best out of his players, especially utilizing slot players as well. Running backs out of the backfield. That's exactly what they did in the draft. They went out there, they got a running back out of the backfield. They got Stefon Diggs in free agency, who could be somebody who can work out of the slot. They still have Demario Douglas. So now the pieces start to come together when you factor in the coaching. And really, all this just starts to add up to Drake May having a pretty big 2nd year. And the DraftKings lines are kind of alluding to this. Over 3,200 is his over-under on passing yards, so that's great. If you look at his DraftKings yardage in terms of rushing, 450 rushing yards is what we're looking at there. I actually like the over on that one right now. If I was to take a player prop, I'm going to kind of wait until we get into August to see what happens with camp before doing that. But I think the passing yards are about right. I think the rushing yards are a little bit low. And overall, Drake May right now goes in the 9th round of fantasy drafts as the 112th overall pick. If you're playing in 10-team formats, he's basically an 11th or a 12th round pick right now. And I think this is great. He goes after Justin Herbert. I'd rather have Drake May from a fantasy perspective, not a real life perspective. Definitely rather have him at cost over Jared Goff right now, who just lost some offensive linemen, who lost his offensive coordinator, who's coming off of an extremely efficient and career type year in terms of production. And now the situation looks a little bit worse in Detroit. So give me Drake May as a breakout player this year that I think we need to be targeting. And then also give me the top 5 overall pick, the number 2 overall pick in the draft, Travis Hunter, the wide receiver / cornerback prospect who lands on the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a guy who is one of the most, if not the most unique prospect we have ever seen come out of college. The guy wins the Heisman as not only the best wide receiver in the country, the Biletnikoff Award, but also one of, if not the best cornerbacks in the country last year as well. I mean, that's just insane, but let's focus, since we're talking about fantasy football here, specifically on what he or what we can expect from him as a receiver. Well, first off, according to Player Profiler's stats right here in college, I mean, this is a guy last year who, splitting time at wide receiver and cornerback during the games, was able to put up 96 receptions, over 1,200 receiving yards, an elite 26% target share. Everything starts to check out, a massive 15 touchdowns. Just a reminder as well, this guy's not like a 23-year-old who's coming out. This is just a 21-year-old who only spent 3 years in college. And again, during that time, he was splitting his time overall. And the advanced metrics, like, those are just the accounting stats, right? The advanced metrics on what he was actually doing on a route-by-route basis, let's look at those because they're also nuts. And for that, we can look at this Matt Harmon tweet. Matt Harmon of Reception Perception. All this guy basically does, well, he does a lot, but one thing that he does really well, he has his site Reception Perception, where he basically just breaks down success rates against man, zone coverage. He watches basically every single snap for a lot of wide receivers, and that's what he did right here for Travis Hunter. And this is what he said about Travis Hunter. The highlights: 92nd percentile success rate against man coverage, meaning top 10% of anybody he's ever charted. 97 percentile against zone, top 3% of anybody he's ever targeted. This one's insane. 97% percentile against press coverage. So this is a guy who is frequently making defenders miss after the catch, as he says here, rare catchability in general. This is a guy who was literally a top 5 to top 10% prospect that Matt Harmon has ever charted. He actually would go on to say that maybe the best prospect that he's ever charted in his model. And that's sourced from a podcast that I recently heard him on. Like, this is just a situation situation where if there wasn't the defender, like potentially going to play cornerback label on Travis Hunter, which I don't think he's going to do all that much, maybe in some like key situations on third downs and longs, or maybe in the red zone. Outside of that, I don't think we're going to get a lot of it, because taking nothing away from Travis Hunter, this is now the NFL. It's extremely hard. You're playing against the best of the best on both sides of the ball. You don't want to get yourself too winded, and now you're just underperforming in both areas. The whole goal here for Travis Hunter is to get a pretty big contract, and the wide receivers, although the cornerbacks too, but the wide receivers get really big contracts, and they usually, their peak of their career lasts a little longer. But I mean, who knows? This guy's already an outlier, so who knows? And you can see right here that this is another stat about the catch point. His catch dominance, we saw Matt Harmon kind of pointed it out. Out of any first-round wide receiver ever recorded from 2014 to 2015, Travis Hunter has the highest career contested catch rate. Number 2 was Drake London, who was almost 10% lower. So this dude, when it comes to contested catches, is a monster. When it comes to just freak athleticism and winning based on his routes, press coverage, man, zone, he's great there. Like, it's everywhere that he's dominated. So it makes a lot of sense why the Jaguars traded up for the number 2 overall pick and gave up basically a lot to go get Travis Hunter, because he's that type of player who could become a franchise player for your team. And sure, Brian Thomas is there, and we really like Brian Thomas on this channel. He's a first-round pick. He's a top 12 overall pick in fantasy this year. He's awesome, but there's a lot of overall room or just targets up for grabs behind Brian Thomas, because let's look at the team changes tracker. This is in the fantasy blueprint. You can check it out at jointheblueprint.com. Christian Kirk is now gone. Evan Ingram is now gone. Heck, even Josh Reynolds, who had a cup of coffee here, is now gone. Gabe Davis was released earlier this offseason, which is leaving behind nearly 150 targets, or about 150 targets, and over about 1,000 receiving yards. Now, of course, I don't think Travis Hunter's just going to come out here as a rookie and get 150 targets and over 1,000 receiving yards, but we should say that behind him, Diami Brown is a guy who's shown some flashes with the Commanders on the outside. Outside of that, Parker Washington as a number 4 is kind of a bigger body in the slot. Like, it's basically just these two guys if we're talking about it. Both guys can play on the outside if they need to. Both guys, especially Travis Hunter, could be moved into the slot as well for some catch and run opportunities, which I think we're going to be seeing with Liam Cohen, the new offensive coordinator here. He was able to get the most out of Mike Evans and especially Chris Godwin when putting him out of the slot. I think we could see a good amount of Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter out of the slot, where you just have so much of the field to work with and get yards after the catch opportunities. And oh yeah, not to mention, these are Trevor Lawrence's season stats, because Trevor Lawrence was injured last year. He only played 10 games, as you can see right here, but in his last 2 seasons when healthy, 16 games, over 4,000 yards, over 4,100 yards. He's completing about 66% of his passes during those seasons. So even though he's not living up to like one of the best generational quarterbacks that we've ever seen when he was drafted, he's still a solid producer. This is still a guy who has never had the best surrounding cast, never had the best coaching, never had the best offensive line, and now he's starting to slowly get all those things outside of the offensive line, I should say, this year. We're also starting to get some quotes, and there's going to be a ton more probably by the time you're watching this. They're coming out since training camps are starting about how impressive these rookies are, and Trevor Lawrence was saying that he just doesn't get tired, Travis Hunter, which makes sense since he's playing both sides of the ball in college, and he didn't realize how explosive this guy was in and out of his cuts, which is very impressive. If you watch just any highlights, you don't even have to watch the film. The film will definitely show it, but any highlights during college, you knew that Travis Hunter was like a special player, just an extremely explosive player, and it kind of just comes through on the tape. Now, I mentioned Liam Cohen is going to come in here and he's going to start calling plays for this team, and we saw that the Bucs offense last year, I mean, it might have been the most creative offense in the NFL, especially when you're talking about just how you married the passing game with the run game and how both of those areas were creating a ton of explosive plays, how he overcame injuries during the season to Mike Evans at one point, to obviously Chris Godwin, and you're still seeing these explosive plays out of guys like K. Dotton at the tight end position. Yes, a lot of that has to do with Liam Cohen, and now he's coming into an offense where he revived, or at least he kept the revival of Baker Mayfield's career going last year. Maybe now he could do the same with Trevor Lawrence, especially when you're talking about the weapons that Jacksonville has, arguably probably are more dynamic, maybe not as reliable as a Godwin and Evans when they're healthy, those veterans, but more dynamic in Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter. But let's not ignore the wild card here that Travis Hunter could play on defense a decent amount. Like, there's some things being thrown out there. What if he plays 30% of his snaps on defense? I don't think it's going to be that. But even if he is, the 70% of the snaps on offense are probably going to be every single passing down situation. So he's still going to run his 25 to 35 routes a game, and I'm not too concerned about that. And we should also point out that if he's on defense and your team or your league actually counts defensive stats, you have an opportunity to also pick up some yards when it comes to some of those stats, or some fantasy points if you're talking about interceptions, deflections, fumble return touchdowns, those types of things. Although it's pretty rare and it really is not going to move the needle too much, it could happen and help you win a week. Right now, the way that I'm looking at this, and you can see Willie Noseball put this on Twitter, Travis Hunter's over-under is set at 749 receiving yards as of right now on DraftKings. Again, this could be subject to change, but depending on the time that you're seeing this, especially if he starts highlighting it up in training camp and preseason when August comes, if he even plays plays. It's also set at about 4.5 touchdowns. This tweet kind of notes that that's a little bit low, and it reminds him of Justin Jefferson's rookie year as well. I wouldn't say that as much since Brian Thomas is there, but 749 receiving yards I do think is a touch too low. If this guy could stay healthy in his rookie year, there's no reason why he can't start putting up 100-yard games here and there, consistently putting up 50 to 60-yard performances, and at that rate, you're going to start to flirt with a 1,000-yard season. And the reason why I think Travis Hunter is a breakout is because since Brian Thomas is there, you're getting his overall draft position where he goes being suppressed. He's going as the 65th overall player in fantasy drafts right now, the 7th round for your 10-team formats, the 6th round of drafts right now for your other formats if you're talking about 12-team formats. So you can get a Travis Hunter in the 6th round. Let's just say you've already locked up your first 2 wide receiver spots, maybe 1 or 2 of your running back spots. You got an elite quarterback or tight end maybe, and now in the 6th round of your draft, you could just take a flex option or heck, maybe even a bench option if you've loaded up on positions in Travis Hunter. That's the exact type of upside play I want to be taking in round 6. I don't want to be taking Sam Laporta. Definitely not David Montgomery, where if he's not scoring 15 touchdowns with a new offensive coordinator and worse offensive line, the upside isn't there. Definitely not Jerry Jeudy, who only produced when he had Jameis Winston last year, and now he's never had a single snap played with any of his quarterbacks this year. So yeah, I feel pretty good as it stands right now about taking Travis Hunter. Just in general, like even if he was a 4th round pick, I'd say that's a little bit steep, but I'd consider it. In the 6th round, yeah, that's a breakout candidate. Now I mentioned he starts to go as the 65th overall pick. If you want to see exactly where I have Travis Hunter ranked and my top 50 overall players in general, you can check it out completely free with the link in the description below, or just head to fantasyrankingsfree.com. That is fantasyrankingsfree.com, which will take you to this page right here. You just drop in your email and then I'll instantly send you those top 50 overall rankings. Make sure to check your promotional and spam folders just in case as well if you don't see it right away. But if you're somebody who's really serious about fantasy football and you want my full top 250 overall rankings to help you with your entire draft, all my other draft tools and in-season tools, that's exactly why I built the Fantasy Blueprint. It's what I use in every single one of my leagues from draft day to championship week, and over 10,000 people used it to help them win their leagues last year as well. If you want to check it out, you can go to jointheblueprint.com right now or click the link in the description below. And just to say this is an important note. The Blueprint pricing will be increasing come August, so right now is the best price you'll get all summer, and there are limited spots available. So if you go over to the page, you'll see it'll say how many spots are remaining. There's only maybe a handful of spots left, so right now is the time to get in. Again, you can check that out at jointheblueprint.com, or there will also be a link in the description below. Okay, now for the next player on this list, I want to talk about a rookie, and it's Jaden Higgins, and I really truly believe he can be a breakout player this year because, look, this is a guy who started his career at Eastern Kentucky. He transfers to Iowa State and just starts dominating. Right away, he gets there, he puts up 1,000 yards, a 22% target share. Last year, he puts up nearly 1,200 yards, 87 receptions, which is crazy for the type of player that he is, and a 29% target share is elite as it gets, especially when you consider that he was competing with Jalen Noel, who's also on this Texans team as a 3rd-round pick last year at Iowa State. Despite that, you're still seeing Jaden Higgins working out there as the alpha on the outside, commanding nearly a 30% target share. Anything above like 20% is starting to become good. 25% elite. 29.5, nearly 30%, as you can see right here on Player Profiler, is fantastic. And I mean, the guy is just like your prototypical outside wide receiver. He actually looks like and reminds you of, especially from a build perspective, Nico Collins, and now he gets to play with that guy in his rookie year with the Texans. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's 6'4", 214 pounds, just like amazing size for an NFL player. That's the Nico Collins, T. Higgins style build, right? These long, lengthy guys. You're talking about his overall athletic testing, blew that away at the combine. 94th percentile speed score, top 6% of all time. Burst score is 87th percentile. Catch radius is top 6% of all time as well. All of these were fantastic. He's very versatile as well. He could play about 30%, 40% of his snaps out of the slot like he did last year in college or his past 2 years at Iowa State, or most of the time you'll see him on the outside about 75% of the time. So now he lands on the Texans, the 34th overall pick, right at the top of the 2nd round of the draft, kind of exactly where like T. Higgins went when he was drafted, Michael Pittman, that range of guys when they were drafted in their draft. This is a great spot to be, and I think he could be a day 1 starter for the Texans. Because when you look at this team overall, Stephon Diggs is no longer there. We talked about him earlier. He's now on the Patriots. They're also not going to have Tank Dell, who's going to miss this entire season. So what you're left with overall in this offense is you're left with Nico Collins as the clear-cut alpha, maybe even could be the number 1 overall fantasy receiver this year. That's how good and he is in the situation that he's in. But after that, this is what you're looking at. Christian Kirk was a veteran who was brought in free agency, mostly a slot receiver. He'll compete with the other rookie in Jalen Noel out of Ohio State. Other than that, though, it's just Jaden Higgins on the outside opposite Nico Collins. And the reason why that's so impressive and so interesting is because Nico Collins is going to take all the defensive attention away, especially on those intermediate to deep routes, which leaves just a lot more one-on-one opportunities for the rookie in Jaden Higgins, who I personally believe could have easily been a 1st-round pick in this past year's NFL draft. That's how good he was. In terms of vacated opportunities, if you're interested in that type of thing, since there's no more Tank Dell for this year, there's no more Stephon Diggs, there's about 175 targets up for grabs and over 1,300 receiving yards. Just to kind of show you how good Jaden Jaden Higgins was in 2024. He got a 90.3 PFF receiving grade. Anything in the 90s is like top 5 at your position, which is awesome. We talked about the receiving yards. Only 2% drop rate. His hands are good. 2.66 yards per route run. Anything above 2 is good. Anything approaching 3 is elite. So he's kind of in that range of being great to elite in terms of his efficiency. Contested catch was solid, and we said he's played about 30% of his snaps out of the slot, 70% out wide, so he's a very versatile player as well. And now he's in a situation where he's going to get to play with CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud, who we're hoping has a bounce back season this year, especially, I mean, the offensive line still looks pretty bad, but if he gets any more time to throw this year, if there's any sort of improvement from being like the worst unit in the league to maybe being just bottom 10, it's going to lead to probably a more efficient and smoother offense for CJ Stroud and the Texans. And the last time that we saw a CJ Stroud being right in his rookie year, he supported both Nico Collins and Tank Dell as top 20 fantasy options. There's a chance that can happen this year with Nico Collins and Jaden Higgins. Everything so far out of OTAs and training camp is starting now, so maybe we get even more quotes, is that the big body receiver flashed his downfield ability by beating multiple cornerbacks throughout the spring, including starting quarterback Kamari Laster. So this is a situation where everything this offseason has been positive about Jaden Higgins. You could see his own head coach right here basically saying he's showing that right now he could be an impact player for us. It means a lot for the entire team seeing him thrive. Again, this is just coach speak stuff. It doesn't really matter all that much, but everything is positive, right? It would be something to note more so if it was negative. It's not, so everything seems pretty smooth here. You look at the depth chart, you look at the draft capital spent on him, you look at the quotes coming out, looks like he's going to be a starter. And the best part is right now, you get to take him outside of the top 10 rounds. These are the exact guys that I want to have upside picks on. Right now in round 11 as the 122nd overall player, your 10-team formats, he could probably be the last pick of your draft in like round 13, 14, 15. I assume if you're drafting on platforms like a Yahoo and ESPN, Jaden Higgins is going to be even further down the draft rankings, which is even more reason why the blueprint can help you identify those guys and kind of pick out the diamonds in the rough. That's what Jaden Higgins is. He's going in consensus right now as a 13th round pick. I would assume on like ESPN and Yahoo, probably, you guys can probably tell me this if you're doing mocks over there. I do mocks on different sites, but ESPN or Yahoo, probably like a 14th, 15th, maybe even a 16th round pick, which is crazy. And real quick, if you're enjoying this content, just take 2 seconds to hit the subscribe button and double check that you have it hit. When you subscribe, it goes a long way for the channel. It lets more people see this content, which only allows me to put out even more of it for you beautiful people. So 2 seconds of your time, hit that subscribe button. Now, the 5th player I want to talk about is Rashee Rice. And obviously, there's a big elephant in the room is the recent news about Rashee Rice's suspension. And as of this recording, we don't know how many games it's going to be. There's a lot of speculation that it's probably going to be closer to 4 to 6 games based on the NFL conduct and like how the conduct just reads in there, that this basically fits into, yeah, you're going to get like a month to 6 games. And that's not great. And that now has to be factored into Rashee Rice, who before this was going as like a 3rd round pick, maybe even a 2nd round pick in some of your drafts. And I actually liked him there. But the fact that he's probably going to miss 4 games, maybe 6 games of the season, you can't be drafting him with your 2nd or 3rd round pick. You probably don't want to be drafting him with like an early 4th round pick. But once we start to get to the late 4th or 5th round, I like Rashee Rice for a lot of the reasons we've been stating all summer. Here's just one of the tweets about it right now. This is from Nick Giloilmo. I don't know how to say the name, FF, sorry about that, on Twitter. You can see right here from weeks 1 through 3, 31% target share, borderline leading the NFL, 35% of his team's air yards, and he was averaging 8 catches and 96 yards per game. Also, during this time, he was averaging nearly 22 fantasy points per game, 2nd in the NFL, only behind Malik Neighbors. And then, unfortunately, Rashee Rice gets injured and misses the rest of the year. And I know what you might be saying, oh, it was just a 3-week stretch. Rashee Rice, you're really going to rely on that. Well, one, yeah, because his competition we'll get into, it's basically the same this year. And he was just that good at creating explosives last year. But then let's look at this right here as well. Rashee Rice, okay, we talked about last year. This is a tweet from No Expert Fantasy Football, but also just dating back to the previous season, his last 9 games now, he's been a wide receiver 1 44% of the time, which is elite, or a wide receiver 2 or better 88% of the time. So that's his last 9 games dating back to the 2023 season, and he's literally been a top 24 wide receiver on a weekly basis almost 9 out of 10 times. Okay, that's fantastic. So that's 9 games. It's a little bit bigger of a sample than the 3 games for the people who are just kind of questioning that. But then there was the injury, right? It was a torn LCL, right? So the LCL, this is a little bit of a concern in general, but it wasn't the ACL. Now, it's not a simple injury. I mean, it kept him out for the entire season, but the good news about this injury is, unlike an ACL where you might have multiple ligaments involved and it could be a year until you feel like yourself again, that's not the case for Rashee Rice. So much so that as soon as late May to early June, when we're talking about OTAs and minicamp, Patrick Mahomes had already said that Rashee Rice is fully recovered from the injury that he suffered last season. You go back into some other reports here, he looks healthy in OTAs. Chiefs, let's pull that back up here quickly. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice has been a full participant by all accounts in OTAs. Since OTAs, it's already been like another month, so he was a full participant, 100%. If there was a game he would have played a month ago, now he's even healthier as of this recording. And then finally, I just want to point out Sports MD Analysis on Twitter. If you've been watching the channel, you know that we like Deepak Chona's overall analysis. This is a Harvard-trained sports Surgeon. He says Rashee Rice data favors a week 1 return at approximately 100% the pre-injury form. So this isn't like a situation like Brandon Ayuk or Chris Godwin where they might miss 1 to 4 weeks to start the year, where there's a chance if even when they're back, they're only 80% themselves for like most of, if not all the season. No, Deepak says that week 1, based on this injury, yeah, Rashee Rice will be like himself. Now, obviously, besides the injury, there is this suspension, which is looming, and we'll see how many games that Adam Schefter just broke. I believe it was on the 17th, July 17th, that Rashee Rice will be sentenced to 30 days in jail and 5 years of probation, right? These 30 days he can do at any point. They don't have to be all 30 days in a row, right? So he can end up doing them right now if he wants to a couple days now. And as I assume, based on the readings, over the next 5 years, he can just get those 30 days done. So this like won't affect his training camp if we're talking about from a fantasy perspective right now, unless some other team penalties come down about him not being allowed to be present there. But as it stands right now, Rashee Rice will probably miss the month of September and come back sometime in October. But again, this isn't an injury. This is a suspension. So he'll come back basically healthy. Your concern would be that during that time, it gives Xavier Worthy even more time to build chemistry with Patrick Mahomes like he did towards the end of last year. It gives Marquise Brown, as he was injured for basically all of last year, time to build chemistry with Patrick Mahomes. And that leaves Rashee Rice just kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit in terms of how the offense is operating for the first 4 to 6 games of the year. And don't get me wrong, I am very concerned when it comes to that, but it all depends on where his draft price settles in. If your league mates are afraid to draft Rashee Rice and now he's falling to being like a late 5th round pick in fantasy, I'm fine to go ahead and scoop him up, because Rashee Rice, you don't need him. It would be great to have him, but you don't need him for the first 4 weeks of your season. There's absolutely no bye weeks in fantasy during those first 3 to 4 weeks. You're probably not going to have to deal with that many, if any, injuries at all on your fantasy team, so you can get by for those first 4 games. Just don't overpay for him now, where he's currently been going is like a 3rd round pick. I mean, the dude for the first 3 weeks of the year was averaging 3.4 yards per route run. This would have definitely or most likely dropped, although if he was as efficient as like a Puka Nacua, who held up like a 4 yards per route run, but this probably would have dropped until maybe the low 3s or the high 2s, but that's still elite. That still would have ranked top 5 in the NFL last year, and it's just really hard to ignore. So I understand why there's a lot of concerns of like, okay, the injury, okay, will he have more target competition this year? I get all of that, but we're kind of just looking at the offense last year for the Chiefs that wasn't good. Imagine if Patrick Mahomes in the Chiefs offense with Andy Reid just gets a little bit better this year, which it easily could. Now you're looking at the number 1 receiver and maybe one of the best offenses in the league. And oh yeah, by the way, in terms of that yards per route run leaders in year 2 and year 3 wide receivers, like we were talking about, you could look at this from 2023 to 2024. Puka Nacua, we talked about how good he's been, right? Look at this, who's number 2 behind him? Rashee Rice in terms of the past 2 years yards per route run. That's your efficiency overall. Let's look at another tweet by Fantasy Points. By the way, that was from Ryan Heath on Twitter. Make sure to follow him. He's great. Fantasy Points, I believe, is the company that he works for. Best wide receivers by first downs per route run. So I just want to point this out. Yards per route run and first downs per route run are like some of the best efficiency metrics, and also highlight how important you are for your offense. That's where your team is, first downs, right? That's what you need to get, first downs and touchdowns as a wide receiver. Your team is leaning on you. You get Tyreek Hill number 1, Puka Nacua number 2, then A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra, Nico Collins. These are all like first round picks, second round picks in fantasy. Then there's Rashee Rice is number 6 on this list, and he's not going anywhere near those other guys or a lot of those other guys who are first or second round picks in fantasy. So let's kind of get a little bit of a reference here. Rashee Rice, before this news comes out, is going as the 34th overall pick, so he's going as like a 3rd round pick in fantasy, right? If we scroll down a little bit to where I think he's going to settle in, I think he probably should settle in this range right here, right around a T-Mac, right around a Devonta Smith, the early 5th round of drafts. I'd be fine drafting him, assuming he's going to miss the 4 to 6 games that we think. Fine drafting him somewhere. I assume Xavier Worthy will start to skyrocket up into the top 50 picks because of this, but I'd still be taking Rashee Rice probably ahead of Jameson Williams at the wide receiver position, definitely ahead of Zay Flowers in my opinion. George Pickens starts to become a toss-up, right? These names, I take him ahead of Jerry Jeudy and Chris Godwin. So if Rashee Rice starts to fall to being a 5th round pick, I'm still in on him. If he falls to the 6th round, he's an absolute slam dunk, and people are overweighting the suspension way too much. Okay, so there's some wide receivers we just talked about. Let's jump back now to the running back position, and also jump back to a rookie like we talked about Jaden Higgins earlier. We'll jump back to a running back rookie, 2nd round pick, another 2nd round pick here. It's keeping the trend alive, and this is going to be the Patriots running back TreVeyon Henderson. And look, we got to talk about TreVeyon Henderson as just kind of a breakout player, because he reminds me a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs in his rookie year, both from a play style perspective, right? Jahmyr Gibbs went as a top 12 overall pick, more draft capital, but Henderson has a decent amount as an early 2nd round pick. But he's just so damn explosive. I mean, this is a guy who, as a freshman in college at Ohio State in the Big Ten, put up 1,200 rushing yards. With his receiving yards, it was over 1,500, 19 touchdowns, and still last year, competing with Quinshon Judkins, who also went as a 2nd round pick in the NFL draft, was able to put up over 1,000 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, and factoring in his receiving yards, put up over 1,300 total yards. We know he's productive. He had 1,000 rushing yards, 200 receiving yards, and 7 yards per attempt last year. The only running back to say that he did that, the only other guy would have been RJ Harvey last year. But he's not just this mega producer. He's He's also an elite athlete when you're talking about 4.43 speed. His burst score, we already know he's explosive and dynamic, top 10%. He's also very reliable. Hasn't fumbled in his last like 700 college touches or nearly. Only 2 drops in college, which is something that the Patriots backfield doesn't have right now. You look at this backfield and it's a not so reliable Ramondre Stevenson and Antonio Gibson from a pass protection and definitely a fumbling perspective. And you don't have that issue with Trevion Henderson, who the Patriots have already deemed a third down back. And look, here's the deal. People are going to say, oh, but he's a smaller build. Oh, he's not going to see 250, 300 touches. Okay, that's fine. I'm completely fine if Trevion Henderson goes out there and catches 60 to 70 balls and has 180 to 200 carries, because he's not going as a second round pick in fantasy. And he's super efficient, so he doesn't even need to like have that many touches to pay off. Think like Alvin Kamara in his prime, right? Or even Jahmyr Gibbs in his rookie year, because right now Trevion Henderson is going as like a 6th round pick, 59th overall in fantasy drafts. And if you start your draft the right way, maybe you get a hero RB, Christian McCaffrey in round 1 or Bijan Robinson, then you load up on some wide receivers, maybe you get elite quarterback or elite tight end in round 5 or 4, and then you come over here in round 6 and you get Trevion Henderson as your RB2. That feels really good. That feels really good when your coach is now Mike Vrabel, who loves to lean on the running backs and also is just a guy who will make sure his offensive and defensive line are the best possible players out there. You draft the top 5 overall pick in Will Campbell like we talked about. You get Morgan Moses, so the offensive line looks a little bit better. Trevion Henderson is a guy that I love getting as an RB2 on a team that already has a proven RB1 and a couple of stud wide receivers. So there you have it. Those are 5 guys that I would consider breakout players that I'm targeting in almost every single draft right now that I do, whether it's a mock draft, a best ball draft, or a real draft. And speaking of drafts that I've just done, you could actually see one of those drafts. It's in this video right here, the perfect draft strategy that will make your friends jealous this year. It's all about round by round, not only the positions you should be targeting, but the strategy behind it as well. I think you're going to find this one very, very helpful.